Hello, everyone. Welcome on back. It's Betting Weekly WTA. I'm Nigel Seeley. I'm delighted to say joining me is our WTA handicapper. It's Rory Jiwani, and we are just a day away now from the first major of 2024 in the tennis world. They come so quick, straight out the blocks into Melbourne. It's Rory Jiwani. We're going to look ahead to the Australian Open. It starts tomorrow. Rory, excited?
I am. I am. We've had a couple of good warm-up tournaments in the lead up. Obviously, this week our outright bets didn't really work out in Hobart or Adelaide. Two very, very trappy tournaments, and we've got a few surprises there. But last week it was before a slam, and I did advise to keep stakes low and proved to be wise because we've had a few upsets. But yeah, really looking forward to it, and obviously the big four, I think we can call them now, dominating the market, and be interested to see whether Iga Swiatek going for her first Australian Open, Aryna Sabalenka is the defending champion, Rybakina beaten finalist last year, so impressive in Brisbane last week, not so impressive this week in Adelaide, and of course Coco Gauff, who's the reigning US Open champion. Those four, I mean, all four would be worthy winners, but who's going to be lifting the trophy in a couple of weeks' time? It's hopefully we'll work it out and pick the winner.
Very, very similar now, the women's game to the men's game, isn't it? There's four players who have just pulled away at the top, making that fab four, and then the rest of them sort of making the places up. And it's very, very similar betting to the men's tournament as well, which if you haven't seen the men's open, we've got a tournament winner market as well there on BetRivers website. We've got a show as well here with Sean Calvert, our 80 big tour handicap as well, looking at that. But it is very, very similar to the men's draw as the women's draw, with these four players who have dominantly moved away. Before we go on to the draw and look at the best markets and some of the props as well on the women's section of the Australian Open, what have we got to look for? What do we have to identify? Is it important to come in form? Is it important to come in cold? What do we got to look for when we're looking for a potential winner of the Australian Open? Because this is so quick. It's like no other sport has it. One of their biggest tournaments straight in 2 weeks in the season. You don't have a major, do you, in January? The first major is the Masters in April. This is raw for any very rare for any sporting event to have a big tournament like this after just 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's I think form is important. I think it's for confidence as much as anything. So obviously Swiatek's on a 16-match winning streak, so she's going to be absolutely buzzing. I think she's dropped one set since October, two sets since October, both to Caroline Garcia. But Rybakina was obviously flying last week, so dominant in Brisbane, and then Adelaide, I'm a bit of a cropper. She struggled against Christina Buxer. And
you could actually. I don't think you should read too much into that. We did
yeah,
sort of mention about it the week before. She had a big week winning the tournament. I mean, I remember a very famous thing that John McEnroe said before a major. You don't want to win the tournament before the major. You want to make the semi-finals, quarterfinals. You want to be match fit, but you don't want to really be peaking too early. So I can understand that to a certain degree. And the same thing's happened in the men's draw. There's some real shock finals, especially over in Auckland, where you've got Tabilo, who's like a 201 outsider up against Tara Daniel. I mean, no one would have predicted that. You can sort of understand it.
You can, but I kind of wish she'd kind of stopped after Brisbane. But I did say I wasn't sure she'd be fully tuned up this week. But yeah, she struggled and struggled. She did win against Buxer, but she didn't make easy weather of it. And then she lost. I mean, she was in all sorts of trouble against Alexandrova. She was 4-love down in the first set. Eventually came back. Looked like she might come back. She got to 4-3, and then she lost the next couple of games. And then she was 5-love down in the second. Yeah, didn't look all that interested. Didn't look really up for it, as she will be in Melbourne. But it just makes me kind of, obviously last season she had a lot of injuries, sort of niggling injuries. She did, win a couple of tournaments, but just something about her. I don't know if it's a mental thing or a physical thing, but just gave me a few little questions. I mean, if she plays like she did in Brisbane, she might well win it because she was so good. The way she played against Sabalenka in the final was phenomenal. But and she hasn't been given she'd been given Karolina Pliskova first up. Now, if Pliskova, she has more bad days than good at this moment in time, but if her serve's working, she's a threat to anyone, especially if conditions are quick. I mean, I've mentioned before, the Australian Open last year didn't play as quickly as Adelaide last year, so it didn't play as quickly as Brisbane and Adelaide this year. It'll play quicker than Hobart, which is pretty slow. The weather, I've been looking at the weather. Wednesday's going to be fun. Looks like it's going to be raining all day, but it doesn't look particularly hot. I mean, it's warm on Monday, Tuesday, and then we get to next weekend. Sunday's going to be fairly warm, but it doesn't look like a roasting Australian Open like we've had in the past. So conditions might not be all that quick. And as I've said before, I think if conditions aren't very quick, that plays more into the hands of Swiatek and Goff rather than Rybakina and Sabalenka. But it's going to be very interesting.
Very interesting. Did you let's go on to some odds and look at the draw and we give a little bit of a breakdown. In the top half of these are the sort of the people that you would expect to be the last 16. So I'm going to break it down the last 16 and give you some opponents. Swiatek has been given, I think she's been given a tough draw. Hence the price she's been given. I mean, she opens up against Kenin. I mean, Kenin's won this tournament before. She's defended, she's won this tournament before. Swiatek hasn't won this tournament. So the opening round against Kenin, which is a tough ask, one of the toughest ask you could be given. She's going to be a heavy favourite. She's a heavy favourite to win it. You expect her to win it, but that is tough. In the second round, she goes up against potentially Kerber, who's another former winner here as well. She got two former winners in round 1 and round 2, and then in the last 16, she probably runs into Kudermetova or Svitolina. In that section as well, in the first quarter, you have Ostapenko and Vondrousova seeded to go through, but you also have some difficult opponents. Azarenka is in that section as well, another 2-time champion here. Navarro is in some form as well. In Q2, Rybakina obviously plays Pliskova in round 1, as you said. She's scheduled to play Kasatkina. Then Zheng, in her quarter, she has 2 Brits, Raducanu and Bolter. She's scheduled to play Pegula. That's the top half of the draw. In the bottom half, we have Zachary Haddad-Meyer. Then we have Garcia, who plays Osaka in the round 1. This is probably the most interesting round 1 match. They will probably play Goff in the last 16. Then we have Ons scheduled to play Krejcikova, but we have Andreeva as a possible second round opponent for Jabeur. Samsonova against Sabalenka as well in that bottom section. So looking at it, I don't think there's really much of an advantage to be in the top or the bottom half of the draw. Obviously, you want to be away from Swiatek, so there's an advantage for people at the bottom half of the draw. But usually you have a draw where it's quite lopsided. This doesn't seem to be lopsided. It seems to be pretty even. I'd probably say the top half is slightly harder when you look at the quality of players in it, like the people floating around unseeded. But I don't think there's much advantage to be in the bottom half of the bottom half. Sorry, the top half of the bottom half.
No, I'd agree with you there. I mean, I just think the way Swiatek's playing, I mean, she thrashed Kerber in the United Cup. It was 6-3, 6-love. Collins looks a shadow of the former self. Kenin was well beaten this week at a tournament she did well at last year. I don't think Swiatek's really going to have much of a challenge until round 4 when she potentially, well, actually in round 3 could be slightly tricky if Linda Noskova gets there. She's a promising young player. But round 4, Svitolina or Kudermetova. I was actually hoping Svitolina might be in the bottom half because I thought she might be a chance at a price, but I can't see her beating Swiatek again. Quarterfinals for Swiatek, Ostapenko or Vondrousova. Vondrousova pulled out tournament this week, so I'm a bit worried about her fitness. Ostapenko I think she's through to the final in Adelaide. She's playing a lot of tennis. That worries me that she's playing so much tennis before a slam. But if she, if it falls right for her and if she's clicking, then she's a very difficult opponent. But we know the problem with Ostapenko. We know the problem is her consistency. And her matches tend to go through, a lot of time they go 3 sets. A lot of the time she's just not playing very well. So she's a pretty... I never like betting on Ostapenko. We've talked about her many times before. She's not a player to have that much trust in. For Rybakina, as I say, that Pliskova first round does look tricky. And then, I mean, probably not until the quarterfinals, looking at either Qinwen Zheng or Jessica Pegula. I mean, Pegula hasn't been playing well, and I think she scratched this morning from Adelaide. She was taken to 3 sets in both her matches. by Bernarda Pera and Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. She hasn't looked brilliant so far this season. We know she's very reliable. She often gets to kind of quarterfinals in these big tournaments, and she might well do so again. Yeah, the bottom half, I think Coco Gauff actually doesn't have a bad route through. Apart from in round 4, where she could get Osaka or Garcia, the winner of that match. I don't think she's got a bad route through to the semi, and I don't think Sabalenka's got a hideous route through either. You mentioned Samsonova, but she's been playing pretty poorly. Pavlyuchenkova's been playing okay. Mira Andreeva is interesting, and I quite fancy her chances against Ons Jabeur, who hasn't played so far this season, hasn't played competitively this season. And she's been doing this documentary. It doesn't really sound like she's got her mind on the game, but I could be wrong. She could just turn up and play fantastic tennis, as we know she can. But Andreeva, still 16, still, I mean, she does look a slam winner of the future. But whether it's this might be a bit too soon. I mean, personally, I find it quite hard to look past the big 4 for their quarters. I think if they play well, I think they get through. And I mean, Bet Rivers do have some really good props bets, some special bets. And one of those is odds on players to reach the quarterfinals. Actually got big four to reach the semifinals. And 3 of them are odds on, and only Rybakina is odds against. And I think that's about right, because, you know, Rybakina has a tough opener. I think the rest have reasonably winnable, well, pretty winnable openers, and then they'll get going, and I think they'll make their way through. But who knows? It's a slam. Yeah, you know, we're used to seeing shocks and slams.
We'll come on to the props in a second, but before we do that, let's have a look at the outright odds. These are the odds with Bet Rivers to win the Australian Open. Iga Swiatek is their favourite at plus 225. As you said, she's never won the Australian Open. The best she's ever done is got to the semi-finals in 2022. Rybakina is plus 450. Swiatek will play Rybakina in the semi-final if it goes to the seedings, and Rybakina has an overwhelmingly good head-to-head record against Swiatek, which is a bit of a concern for Swiatek backers. Aryna Sabalenka, the tournament winner, defending champion from last year, she is in the bottom half draw. She's 5-1 now. How she will recover from that humiliating defeat from Rybakina is a really interesting question. Coco Gauff, obviously on another great winning run. She won the tournament last week in Auckland. Was it Auckland? I'm sure it was Auckland. She won the tournament there and obviously won the US Open. She's 5-1 as well. And then we go into some big prices. Jess Pegula 17, Naomi Osaka 25, a 2-time champion here. Ons Jabeur 30, Kenwin Zheng 30, Ostapenko 35, Andreeva, you mentioned 40, Zachary 40. Beatrice Haddad 50, and then 50-1 Marketa Vondrousova, the Wimbledon champion as well. But it is dominated by those top 4. And I think I genuinely believe that Swiatek is the best player in the world. And I genuinely believe the other 3, there is a cigarette paper between the 3 of them. I think you can beat, each one of them can beat anyone on any given day. But I also think it's all to do with the court conditions. And I think if the scheduling is good here at the Australian Open and it's a cooler, it will suit Gauff and it will Swiatek. But if they have to play in the heat and the temperature gets up in the second week, then that will really be a big advantage to Rybakina and Sabalenka. So I think this is a little bit of an unknown tournament because of the conditions that they're going into here. But I personally look at Swiatek here at 225, and I know you're quite keen on the poll and you think it's a bit of a value price. But I think it's a tough ask to go through it. So we sort of teed you up there. Iga Swiatek is your pick. You think she's going to win her first major. She is the favourite. Give us the reasons why you think this is the bet.
I think when you look at how she's played since, I mean, we can go back a year. So obviously she was favourite last year as well, but her prep wasn't brilliant. She had that very heavy defeat to Jess Pegula in the United Cup, which I remember we talked about, and she was in tears at the end of that match. I think she was beaten 6-2, 6-2, really thumped. And as well, I mean, and a lot of last season, she spent a lot of last season being the hunted. She was world number 1. And it felt like after the French, pretty much every week, Sabalenka had a chance to topple her number 1. And I think she really felt that. and she really didn't enjoy that tag of being number one with all that pressure. And then eventually she lost it at the US Open. She went down in the can't remember what round she lost in there, but she lost in the US Open. She lost to Goff in Cincinnati. She'd beaten Goff 7 times out of 7. Goff had this resurgence working with Per Riba, who she's no longer working with now, but working with Brad Gilbert, who she still is working with. Swiatek just wasn't happy. She didn't look happy. She then lost to Kudermetova in Tokyo, and then since then she's been unbeaten. And we've seen a couple of changes. She's been a lot more aggressive on faster courts. She's coming into the net more. She's not just sitting on the baseline and waiting for her opponent to make a mistake like she has done in the past. And the game that's proved so effective on the slower hard courts. On the quicker hard courts, she looks much more potent. She's changed her service action as well in the close season. I've mentioned it before. It's a bit more of a rounder arm take back. And she's getting a little bit more power on that. Her serve wasn't bad before, but it's just got a little more pop. And this season, she's looked incredible. In the United Cup, she absolutely cruised through all her matches, with the exception of against Garcia, where she lost the first set 6-4 and then won the next 2 6-1, 6-1. She thrashed Kerber, as I mentioned, and she just looks happy now. She looks happy with her status as world number one. And I feel like she's improving her game. Whereas the only player I think who could challenge Swiatek when she's at her best at the moment, well, actually, I was going to say Rybakina. Sabalenka probably could as well, because when she gets going, she just wallops the ball and it's hard to cope with her. I think if Swiatek's at her best, Goff can't beat her. They're not going to say they're similar sorts of players, but they enjoy the same sort of conditions. If it comes up really quick, then you'd have to fancy Sabalenka back. And that could happen, as you mentioned. We don't know whether it's going to be like in a week and a half or 2 weeks' time when the Australian Open final is. We don't know yet. I mean, the forecast we've got for the next week or so isn't spectacularly hot, which would be an advantage to Swiatek. But I think just the changes in her game, the changes in her mental approach and her attitude, I think she's going to win this. I don't think plus 225 is a great price. It's not going to make you rich. But I think it's reasonably fair. I think based on what we've seen this season and based on if Melbourne doesn't come up as quick as Brisbane, for instance.
I've actually bet Goff each way, but I took 7-1 earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And the reason
that was a good price.
The reason why I took that was I just thought I think she'll come through that third set quarter. I think she's full of confidence. She's the highest paid sportswoman in the world. She's got an aura about her now. I think she'll get through that third quarter, and she got running to Sabalenka, and she's got a good record against Sabalenka. And she's my fade of the tournament, Sabalenka, because I don't think mentally she will be able to recover from that battering she took from Rybakina in such a short period of time. I think Swiatek, the reason I took Goff, because I thought myself, if the only player I think she should be frightened of in the draw is Swiatek. Her record, as you've touched on, is so good against the American that she always beats her. And I know she did beat her in Cincinnati, but I think it's 7-1 in favour of the poll. And I think if she got to the final, I would have cashed at 350 with the each way that Bet Rivers were offering. So I was quite happy with my each way part rather than taking Swiatek. I think it could be a Swiatek Goff final. That's my prediction here. I do want to fade Sabalenka. I think it's a huge pressure when you're the defending champion as well to do that. Something she's never coped with. So, I think the market's dominated by the top four. Iga Swiatek is the pick from Rory. For me, I've took Coco Gauff at 7s. I probably wouldn't have bet her at 5s, but I would, I wouldn't disagree that Swiatek is the player to beat. And we are in agreement that the top four are pretty much in an elite group now above everyone else. If we were looking for someone at a big price who might give us a run for our money, anyone there you might look at and think, they could go deep. I know Bet Rivers have specials on to make the quarterfinal and the semi-final. You've got some interesting in there. But before we come on to them, is there anyone that you think potentially at a big price could go well for us?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I really wanted Svitolina in the bottom half because I thought she might give us a bit of a run, but I don't fancy against Swiatek. Mira Andreeva might be a bet at $40 each way. She potentially faces On Jabeur in round 2, but the rest of that quarter doesn't look too bad. But then I don't know. It's a lot to ask because last week in Brisbane, she was far too good for Lyudmila Samsonova.
I
And then
watched
she
that
lost.
match, and it was a mismatch. She was unbelievable, Andreeva. 16
Yeah.
years old, she absolutely tore Samsonova apart. And I could see on the odds comparison websites the price of Andreeva just crashing as every point was
Yeah.
going in. She was 70-1, 80-1, and by the end of the match, she was 25-1. It was a sensational performance. But whether she can do that back to back, I think the bet would be to actually bet Andreeva to beat Jabeur if they play, because Jabeur
Yeah.
will probably be a slight favourite. Maybe you might get plus 110 Andreeva, but I think that's the match that I think she'll relish that much more than Jabeur. Jabeur doesn't seem to be in the mental state. She was talking about winning a major and then wanting to have a baby. She seems to have lost her love. You know, she's talking about her documentary she's doing now and how she felt after that Wimbledon final. And she seems like a girl who's really going back to it. Like, keeps talking about it. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
come on, John. You got loads more in your career. Don't keep looking back. Look forward. Yeah, so really, it's difficult to find so much value. So really, for us, we've only got the one official pick. We're going to go for Iga Swiatek to win it at plus 225 on
Well,
the
in the
outright.
outright market, yeah. I think she's the most likely winner. It's not the best price in the world, but I just think until she gets into the business end of the tournament, I don't think she's going to have too many troubles. Whereas I think Goff doesn't have a bad route through, but Rebecca, as we mentioned, might have a little bit of a worry. Sabalenka as well. I mean, she's in the same quarter as Andreeva and Jabeur. We know Jabeur beat her at Wimbledon last year. Got the likes of Amanda Anisimova, who's coming back as well, and she had a good win against Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, and then sort of bombed against Marie Bauskova. There are some dangers in there for Sabalenka if, as you say, she isn't quite all there after that defeat to Rybakina. But yeah, Swiatek's the one for me. Not going to have a ridiculous bet on it, but I think she's the most likely winner given the conditions I'm expecting over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, plus 225. Obviously, if the weather does pick up in that second week, that will be not a positive for us, but she is the woman to beat. She is in form, 16-0 coming into the tournament. She is the girl to beat, and a plus 225. Rory believes that is still a value pick. Talking about value pick, Bet Rivers have a huge amount of markets. Head to the Bet Rivers website. You look at all the matches. There's 64 first round matches, 38 different markets on all them matches as well. You will not find a more comprehensive tennis service from any other sportsbook across the United States or America. The one market they do have is props on players to reach the third round, to reach the quarterfinals, to reach the semifinals. There's a graphic here with some players to reach the quarterfinal, and a graphic here for 2 players to reach the third round or not to reach the third round. What's caught your eye here, Roy? You've got a couple of plays on this.
Well, the ones that have caught my eye. So Naomi Osaka to reach the quarterfinal is plus 650. And that depends what sort of price you reckon should be to beat Coco Gauff. I don't know. I reckon probably plus 250 against Coco Gauff, maybe plus 300. That seems a bit big. So it depends, how you'd price up that encounter. I think she's minus 110 against Caroline Garcia. I think she's a very, very narrow favourite for her opener. If she got through that, she'd win her next 2, but then it's to beat Gauff to get into the quarters. So, I mean, that is an interesting bet. Pegula is minus 121 to reach the quarterfinals and minus 107 not to do so. Given the form that she's shown so far this season, I'd definitely be leaning against. I'd be leaning towards the minus 107. To reach the third round, I find these two quite interesting. So they've got to win 2 matches. Paula Badosa plus 275 to get through to the round 3, but minus 385 not to reach round 3. She looked absolutely shattered in the third set against Bernarda Pera in her first match back. Breathing really hard at 2 apiece in the final set. She was 3-2 up, and then she lost the next 4 games. I think she's got a way to go before she's really mixing it with the best again. And Taylor Townsend is not an easy opponent first up. Very aggressive, comes into the net a lot. She's a player that can really disrupt your rhythm. And if she gets through that, then it's the winner of Pavlyuchenkova and Donna Vekic, which won't be easy. So definitely be leaning towards -385 against. But I am interested in Amanda Anisimova at +290 to reach the third round. She plays Ludmila Samsonova, and as you mentioned, that match against Andreeva looked like a mismatch. She's been well below par this season. She then lost to Laura Siegemund. It's like one extreme to the other. You've got the rising 16-year-old sparky talent and Laura Siegemund, who's been around for a very long time. No secrets to her game. And Samsonova, who's very serve dependent. She's probably the most serve dependent player on the tour. Just couldn't get going against her. And Anisimova, as I mentioned, she beat Pavlyuchenkova in Brisbane. Then she took just one game of Marie Bauskova. Not ideal. But she seems pretty happy, with her preparation, with returning to tennis. She took a break last summer due to her mental health. I'm prepared to forgive that defeat to Bauskova. She's +185 to beat Samsonova, which I don't think is a bad price. In round 2, if she got through that, she'd face either Nadia Podoroska or Tamara Zidansek, both out of form. Don't think either have won so far this year. And Podoroska pulled out injured before her last match. And so you've got to work out, would she be shorter than -140 to beat Podoroska or Zidansek? I think definitely yes, if she knocked out Samsonova. So I think Anisimova at +290 to reach the third round is a definite bet.
You sound more confident on that than Swiatek. Samsonova sounds like
I think I am. It's a better price. Yeah.
We've also got a view on the semi-finals, and we've got some prices here for the top 4. Swiatek is -190, 182, I think, to make the semi-finals, +140 not to. -122 Sabalenka to make it, -106 not to. The flip side to that for Goff, -106 to make it, -122 no. Rybakina +120 to make the semi-finals, -155 not to make the semi-finals. Anything caught your eye there?
Well, as I said before, Rybakina is the only one who's plus money to reach the semis there. She probably has perhaps the toughest route, but it depends. I mean, all about that first round encounter with Pliskova. I guess, if you're thinking there's been a psychological effect on Sabalenka from that defeat in the Brisbane final, then you'd be looking at that -107 and thinking that's a bet, not to reach semi-finals, because she is going to face some decent opposition. It's not going to be plain sailing. And if there is any hangover from Brisbane, then that might be worth a bet. But I think for me, I was interested that Rybakina's plus money and the rest are all odds on. Not a bet for me here, but an interesting market. And I really like some of these markets that Bet Rivers have for this tournament. They're certainly a bit more, especially when you have a situation where the top 4 dominate the outright market so much. It's good to have these extra bets to have a look at.
I think the toughest route for all the players is Swiatek. I think she's got the toughest route. Henning, Kerber, Kudermetova, Svitolina, Ostapenko, Azarenka. She's got to play 3 champions at this tournament before she even reaches the semi-final. Or Vondrousova, Wimbledon champion as well. I think I don't think it can be more difficult for her. I think she's the best player in the world. But I think if you look at the draw, she's got the toughest draw of the lot, and she needs it to be a lot cooler. Look at the Australian Open to name the finalists. I'm not saying I don't think she'll make the final, because I do think she'll make the final. And I would predict Swiatek Goff here at $8. +$6 Swiatek Sabalenka, +$8 Swiatek Goff, +$12 Rybakina Sabalenka, repeat of last year, 1,700 Rybakina Goff, and Andreeva has made the list ahead of them top 4, as well as those top 4, at 25-1 to make the final against Swiatek. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like the look of Swiatek Goff. I mean, again, this is assuming it stays, the weather doesn't get too hot and it doesn't play too quick. But I feel like it's not a bad bet. It's like contingency, isn't it? If it stays cool, Swiatek wins the tournament. If it stays cool, Goff wins her half. So have them to meet in the final. $8 for Swiatek Goff. I think that's a really good price.
Well,
myself.
I'm a better off to win a tournament, but trust me, I do not want to finish Swiatek in the final. I think that's the one player. Anybody else is right. I want you to win. Obviously, Roy is one. The viewers here to win, but from my selfish point of view, I do not want Swiatek in the final against Goff. So it might be an emotional edge for me to have a bit of $8 and think if it does get that final, I know that Goff's got no chance. So there it is. There's our little wrap up of the women's draw. And Rory's going for the favourite, Iga Swiatek. There doesn't seem to be a lot of depth to this tournament. The women's game for years and years has been a lot of depth, and now there's been this Fab Four that have pulled away and could dominate in 2024. Wouldn't surprise me to see those 4 players competing in every single major. So our pick for the 2024 Australian Open is the tournament favourite, Iga Swiatek, at what we believe is value at plus 225. And if you were looking for a little bit more value, and probably Rory's real strong pick of the tournament is Anisimova to make the round 3. Head to the BetRivers website. There's a load of props on there, and that was plus 395. Was it, or 360?
Plus 290.
Plus 290. Anisimova to make round 3. So make sure you head to the cross there and check that one out. Thank you very much for watching the show. If you want to keep abreast of everything that we've got, some unbelievable content coming across on the tennis and also the world of soccer, please make sure you subscribe to the Betting Weekly Studios on YouTube. Give us a subscribe there and you will be alerted every time any bit of new material drops. Remember, you can follow us on our Twitter account and our Instagram account at Because We Win, the joint handle we share with all the handicappers there. I'm sure Rory will put some videos of some match bets or something, little insights as the tournament goes on. And also, you can what was the next button? I can't remember what I was going to say now. What was the other bit we're going to do? Oh, you can download the podcast on your preferred podcast provider. I forgot so many things I've got to mention there. Download your podcast on the Betting Weekly WTA show on your preferred podcast provider, and you stay across all the content here throughout the tournament at Australian Open. Rory, have a good day, mate. Have a great tournament. We'll catch up with you as the tournament progresses, and we'll speak, I'm sure, with some videos on socials as the tournament goes on. Good luck with your pick on Swiatek. Not too much luck. Let's hope that Goff gets it. If Goff gets to the final, I've cashed. I'll be happy.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's my plan. So I think she's got an easy route. But and hopefully we can cash on that. Was the $8 Swiatek Goff an official pick or as well?
Yeah, we'll have that as an official pick as well.
Let's have that. So we've got an extra pick there. Swiatek Goff in the final. Swiatek to win, and Anisimova to make round 3. That's it for today. Good luck for your bets. Good luck for the weekend. And remember, 7 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, Australian Open, the first major of 2024 in the tennis world starts. Head to the BetRivers website. Loads of specials. You will not get more betting markets than anywhere else across America. Take care.